How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to On The Ball and welcome back to Week 2 Premier League predictions this week. It was all square between me and Sim last weekend. It finished 14-all. Sim getting one scoreline right and also a Starman goal, and I got two scorelines right, so it ended up 14-14. Let's see how we get on this week. Starting off with Friday night football, Nottingham Forest against Sheffield United. And yes, you've guessed it, we've both gone for the same scoreline, 2-0 to Nottingham Forest. Why 2-0, Sim?
Yeah, I think Forest, the way they've started playing in the latter stage of last season and maybe this season, a bit more of a pragmatic style, and I think it's going to be suited to keeping out Sheffield United. I think they really struggled to create chances against Crystal Palace at home, and I think going away from home is going to be even more difficult. I expect Forest to be a bit more, let's say, adventurous in this game than they were against Arsenal, so I expect a bit of a change up in the front line. I actually expect them to dominate possession a bit more, and I think they should have the quality to get past Sheffield United in this game. I think Sheffield United are going to struggle to really lay a glove on Nottingham Forest going forward.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I wasn't impressed whatsoever by Sheffield United. Nottingham Forest as well. I wasn't too impressed, but you can't really take too much away because they did have a very tough game at Arsenal. So I think when you're looking at last season and what Nottingham Forest did in the Premier League, it was very impressive how they kept up their home form for the majority of the season, and I expect them to get off to winning ways in their first home game this season against a newly promoted side, Sheffield United. So 2-0 to Nottingham Forest. Let's move on to Fulham against Brentford in a West London derby. Sim's gone for 1-1. I've gone for 2-1 to Brentford. I mean, I like Brentford. I think they've got a really solid side. They're going to be a tough team to beat this year, and with Wissa and Mbeumo playing like they're doing, I think they can get a few goals as well in the absence of Ivan Toney. Fulham, on the other hand, going through a few problems. Mitrovic seemingly out the door now, and I think they're going to struggle to score goals, and I think Brentford are going to come out on top on this one, so 2-1.
Yeah, I think it's a game that could suit Brentford depending on Fulham's approach. I think Marco Silva's side are usually quite defensively solid. They did have I wouldn't say an impressive victory, but they did beat Everton on the opening day. They were quite lucky, I think, to get that victory. But first home game of the season, I think Marco Silva want to try and up their game for this one. But I think Brentford are going to be very, very difficult opponents. They like to play on the counter in transition, especially without Ivan Toney. So I expect them to be very tough opposition, but I think they're going to cancel each other out. So I'm going for a 1-1.
Next up, Liverpool against Bournemouth. The exact same scoreline once again, 3-1 to Liverpool. Tell me why.
Yeah, I think Liverpool in their opening game against Chelsea were very, very direct, and they were opening up Chelsea in the early exchanges, but they kind of lost control of the game. Chelsea grew into it. They were very intense and were able to grab control in the second half. But I think Liverpool will be able to maintain control in this game. I think Bournemouth, with their new offensive style under Iraola, I expect them to maybe create a few chances against Liverpool, but with Liverpool's quality, and I don't think Bournemouth are going to be able to get control back from Liverpool like Chelsea did. So I've gone for a home win for Liverpool 3-1.
Yeah, I think this kind of game will play into Liverpool's hands with the way they like to play. I think Bournemouth will leave some gaps, albeit I do think they'll be maybe a bit more pragmatic than they probably would have liked. But going to Anfield's always a tough game. And Liverpool, with them not really reaching the heights they wanted to on week one, I think that at home, first game at Anfield with their front line, I think they're going to teach Bournemouth a bit of a lesson this weekend. So 3-1 to Liverpool. Next up, Wolves against Brighton. Both of us going for Brighton wins. Sim's gone 1-0. I've gone 2-0. I was impressed by Wolves' first game. I think everyone was. Everyone had them as their pick to go down, and they had a really strong performance at Old Trafford and should have taken more out of the game. But I think those same problems are still there. They can't seem to get their the ball in the back of the net, essentially. And I think Bournemouth, on the other hand, I mean, they were just so dominant against Luton. They probably should have won by more. They probably shouldn't have conceded on the day with a very lucky penalty going against them. So I can see Bournemouth having a lot of the ball and then putting a few past Wolves. But I think Wolves will be a bit tough to beat on the day.
Yeah, look, as you say, I think Wolves were really impressive on the opening day. I think that midfield three of Lamina, João Gomez, and Marcus Cunha in the number 10 as well. I thought they're all really, really impressive and were able to bypass that Man United midfield. I don't see them getting the same kind of joy in this game they did against Man United. I think Brighton will have a bit more control than Wolves did. But I do see Wolves making things difficult for Brighton, and I do see them causing a bit of trouble. They just lack that clinical striker right now, and I think that's going to be very, very difficult to see where the goals are going to come from right now for Wolves, especially against a Brighton team who are going to look to dominate possession, and Wolves are going to have to take their chances when they come, and I'm just going to bank on them not. But I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it's going to be a close fought encounter, and I think Brighton are just going to find that moment of quality, and I've gone for them for the 1-0 win.
All right, next up, Tottenham against Manchester United. 5:30 kickoff at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this Saturday, and me and Sim have gone for the exact same scorelines again in a Desmond. Why 2-2, Sim?
I think that I actually expect Tottenham to dominate possession in this game, given how they like to play with the inverted fullbacks and create a outnumbering in the centre of the park. We saw how Man United struggled against Wolves with their midfield dominance, and I think Tottenham could exploit that if Man United adopt the same approach. However, Ten Hag showed a different side to Man United last season. He showed a side who was able to attack in the transitions and be very, very clinical on the counter-attack, and that could be a very useful tool in this kind of game when Tottenham look to dominate, but Man United look to spring on them on the counter. I think if we create a similar amount of chances that Wolves did in the opening game, I bank us to put away at least a couple of them, because they did create a number of chances. But I also think we're going to be very open on the counter. I think players like Rashford are going to be very, very effective in that kind of game. So I can see a very even game, and I've gone for 2-2.
Yeah, I don't think Spurs have beaten Man United in the league since that 6-1 game back in the COVID times, and I don't think we've beaten them at home since that Christian Eriksen really fast goal at Wembley. I mean, we haven't beaten them in so long, and I think it's about time we do beat them. But look, I have gone for 2-2. I do envisage this being quite an open game, and I think the positive for Man United after that shocking performance at Wolves and getting over the line, I don't think they can be as bad as that 2 weeks in a row, and they always seem to turn it on when they play against us, to be honest. And I think that, look, I agree with you. I think we will dominate the possession, but I think with the players that they do have on the break, with Rashford and Bruno spraying the passes, and Anthony and potentially Sancho as well, I think they will hurt us the other way. So I couldn't really split the sides. So I think Spurs will dominate it, get a couple of goals, but I think we will get open up by Man United on the counter-attack. So 2-2 in the game at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Next up is Aston Villa against Everton. Both of us gone for 2-0 to Aston Villa. And Aston Villa, they had a shocking performance. Well, they had a shocking result, let's say, against Newcastle first time out, 5-1. And I think Unai Emery at home will drill it into them that they have to get on to winning ways in their first game at Villa Park this season. And Everton, away from home, I don't really have too much confidence. If this game was at Goodison, I thought maybe it would be a much tighter game, but I think because it's at Villa Park, Unai Emery, he'll set up exactly knowing what Everton are going to do. So I think 2-0 to Villa.
Yeah, and I think Villa are going to be a lot more offensive in this game. They're going to throw a bit more caution to the wind. I think they were quite pragmatic, especially in the early exchanges against Newcastle. And actually, when they went a bit more gung-ho and going forward, that's where that led to problems when Newcastle started creating chance after chance. I don't see that happening. I think Villa will have a bit of problems if Everton do somehow take an early lead and they have something to hold on to. I think that could cause Villa some problems, because I don't see Villa as a fantastic side just in possession when they're facing a low block. I think they tend to struggle against those kind of teams. But looking at the quality they have, even against a side like Everton, who are going to come to Villa Park probably looking for a draw, I think they have enough quality to open up Everton, at least from set pieces, or find a moment of quality from a Tielemans or a Diaby to get that lead. And once they take the lead, Villa, they'll have Everton exactly where they want them, and I'll bank on them to seal the game late on. So I've gone for 2-0.
Yeah. Next up, Manchester City against Newcastle, which is actually the late kickoff on the Saturday, 8 o'clock kickoff. Both of us gone for 2-1 to Man City, and Man City had a very taxing game last night against Sevilla out in Athens in the Super Cup, going all the way to penalties. And look, it's not what you want with a game against Newcastle just around the corner, especially on the Saturday. I do envisage Man City will be strong enough to win the game, but I think it's going to be a very, very tight game, just split by the odd goal, 2-1.
Yeah, and I think Newcastle showed how effective they can be on the counter-attack against Aston Villa in that second half. So I think that's definitely a warning sign for Man City if they think they just dominate possession and take control of the game. If Newcastle can be kept at bay, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do that. I see a very close game. Newcastle very good defensively as well, as they showed last season, although second half of last season they kind of let that slip a bit, and I also think they conceded quite a few chances to Villa on Sunday. So I think Man City have the players to open up Newcastle, but I do expect Newcastle to be a really big threat on the counter-attack and create some chances. So I've got them to score, but it's so hard to go against Man City, especially at home, so I've just gone for them to sneak it 2-1.
All right, next up is a London derby, West Ham against Chelsea. Sim has gone for 1-1 in this game. I've gone for 2-1 to Chelsea, but what's your thinking behind the draw?
I think Chelsea played really well in the opening game against Liverpool, but I did also think Liverpool, in a way, played into their hands the way they're going to throw caution to the wind, get players up higher on the pitch, and leave a lot of space for Chelsea to play, essentially, and try and go for that win. They're going to come up against a very different kind of opposition in West Ham, who are going to try and frustrate them and try and clog up the central areas, where it's going to be a lot more difficult, I feel like, to Chelsea to just play through West Ham like they were able to do Liverpool. So I also think, going back, I think West Ham, with the likes of Jarrod Bowen, could be a threat on the counter-attack for Chelsea, who are probably going to dominate the game, but that could suit West Ham. So I've gone for Chelsea to get frustrated in this game, especially West Ham in front of their home fans in a London derby. So I've gone for a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I was impressed with Chelsea, to be fair, against Liverpool. I felt like they were growing and growing as the game wore on. Second half, I thought they definitely should have taken the win against Liverpool. West Ham weren't too impressive in their first game, let's be honest, but in their first game in the London Stadium, I do expect them to turn up. But I just think Chelsea, with the firepower that they do have, I feel like they missed a lot of chances against Liverpool. And if they put some of those away against West Ham, I do think they will get the win. I feel like West Ham probably get a goal from a set piece or something against Chelsea. Maybe there's some of their new signings will be playing in this game, but I think the way Pochettino is going to set up Chelsea, I think they'll dominate the possession, and I think they'll create plenty of chances throughout the game, so I expect them to take some of them. So 2-1 to Chelsea. And the last game, the last game is Monday Night Football, Crystal Palace against Arsenal, another London derby. Both of us gone for Arsenal wins. Sim's gone for 1-0. I've gone for 2-0. And look, I think Arsenal are going to completely dominate this game. I don't really have too much hope for Crystal Palace this season in terms of them going forward. They were a real big threat last season with the likes of Zaha and Elise and Eze, but that's been depleted now. Elise has gone pretty much. Zaha's gone on a free. So that leaves real Eze with the likes of Jordan Ayew and Odyssey Edouard and stuff. Edouard did get a goal, but I feel like this Arsenal defence will be too strong for them, and Arsenal will hit them a couple of times. So 2-0.
Yeah, I've gone for 1-0. I think it's going to be a hard-fought victory for Arsenal. Palace, with their first home game of the season off the back of an opening day victory against Sheffield United, may take a bit of confidence going into that game that maybe they're not going to be as bad as people are predicting. I don't believe that. I think in the long term, they are going to suffer badly for the players that they're losing, especially in the front line. If Arsenal can nullify Eze, I find it very, very difficult to see how Palace are going to hurt them. But I can see them being very, very difficult for Arsenal to break down, especially in a very tight stadium like Selhurst Park. So it's going to be difficult for Arsenal to find the space required to really open them up. But I do feel that they'll get that moment of quality. They're good, and they've got good enough players to do it. And I fear that Palace won't be able to respond. So I've gone for a 1-0.
All right, well, now let's move over to the star man. Just a reminder, once you pick this man, you cannot pick them again for the rest of the season. And it's 5 points for a goal, 2 points for an assist. And let's get into the star man. Who has Sim picked? He's picked Taiwo Awoniyi of Nottingham Forest. Tell me why.
Because I think Forest are going to go more offensive in this game. I do think that Sheffield United are going to be more sitting back, and that means that a hold-up man like Awoniyi is going to be a lot more effective in this kind of game than maybe he was against Arsenal. He did come on against Arsenal and scored as well. Had a fantastic run of form at the back end of last season when he was scoring nigh on a weekly basis, like for the last few games of the season. And I think he's going to be really suited to playing against a Sheffield United back line. I think he comes into the starting lineup after being benched on the opening weekend. So I've gone for him to score.
Yeah, I've gone for Ollie Watkins, obviously at home to Everton. He didn't get off the mark last game, but he did grab himself an assist, and I think he had such a stunning season last year. I do back him to get off the mark against Everton. He'll be on penalties as well, so I think it should be a good start to the season for Ollie Watkins. Maybe an assist in the first game and hopefully a couple of goals in the second game as well. So I've gone for Ollie Watkins. Sim's gone for Taiwo Awoniyi of Nottingham Forest. So let me know your predictions in the comment section below. Let me know who you think is going to come out on top as well. Let me just remind you the scores are 14-14 in the runnings, and it's 5 points for a completely correct scoreline, 1 point for a correct result, and it's 5 points for a goal and 2 points for an assist for the star man as well. But thank you everyone for watching today, and we'll see you next time.